Today, we're diving into a book with a name that sounds like, I don't know, a beautiful poem. It's called The Perfumed Garden. But what it really is one of history's most detailed and, honestly, surprising guides to love, sex, and relationships.
All right, so think about this for a second. We tend to believe we've kind of figured out relationships in our modern world, right? But what if I told you that some of the most profound advice actually comes from a book that's 500 years old? And not just relevant advice, but stuff that feels, well, incredibly progressive. Let's see what it's all about.
So, our story really kicks off with the author himself, a guy named Shaykh Nefzawi. And he wasn't just anybody. The records describe him as a man of great erudition. A super respected scholar. He was an expert in literature, medicine, and law in Tunis. Which brings us to the big question, the central mystery, really. Why on earth would a guy like that write a book that's, well, let's just say really explicit? Well, the book's full title actually gives us a huge clue. It wasn't some back alley, forbidden text, no way. It was actually commissioned by a high-ranking government official, the Vizier of Tunis. Think of him as a prime minister. So this was meant to be a serious guide. Its whole purpose was to lay out the secrets to marital happiness for both men and women. And you better believe the sheikh himself took this mission seriously. I mean, incredibly seriously. He basically says his book isn't something to hide or be ashamed of. To him, it was a science. He's pretty much throwing down the gauntlet, saying, hey, if you ignore this, you're just choosing to be ignorant. So for him, this wasn't just about pleasure. It was about digging into a really fundamental part of what it means to be human.
Okay, but here's where it gets really good. There's this fantastic, totally human backstory to how the book even got written. So the story goes that the sheik was about to be forced into a government job he absolutely did not want. So what's his master plan? He writes a book so unbelievably detailed and scandalous about sex that there's no way they could give him the job. I mean, talk about an exit strategy. It has to be one of the most brilliant I quit notices in all of history.
All right, so what's actually inside this thing? Let's get into the specifics, because this is where it gets fascinating. We'll start with something everyone can relate to. What makes someone attractive? The book basically splits everyone into two camps, the praiseworthy ones and the ones to be held in contempt. Pretty harsh, right? And when you look at what they valued in men, it's this amazing mix of the physical and, well, their character. Yeah, okay, there's a big focus on stamina. You can't miss that. But what's really wild to me are the things that get you on the bad list. A guy who does not kiss, bite, or tickle is actually looked down on. And check out that last point on both sides. It's not just about the bedroom. Being generous, brave, and truthful was just as important. Character was a huge part of the attraction. Now, for women, it's a similar story, a blend of physical traits and behavior. The book lays out a really specific ideal body type. Plump, lusty, you get the idea. But just like with the men, that's only half the picture. Virtues like being loyal and supportive were key. And so was hygiene, using perfumes and cosmetics. It really was this complete, holistic picture of what they saw as the perfect partner. Okay, let's get to the real heart of the book, its core philosophy. And this is where it starts to feel, honestly, way ahead of its time. It's all about the art of love, with this huge, unmissable emphasis on mutual pleasure and especially the woman's experience. This next quote is probably the most famous one from the entire book, and it just perfectly sums up his whole philosophy. He says, a woman is like a fruit. She won't yield her sweetness until you rub her between your hands. He uses other comparisons too, like amber or a basil plant, things that you have to warm up or handle gently to get the best from them. And what's he really saying? It's a powerful, poetic argument for the importance of foreplay. And believe me, he gets super specific about it. He lays out this whole step-by-step guide, and it's all focused on her experience. It starts with toying, which is just playful touching. Then it moves to kissing her cheeks, her lips, her breasts. Then he says to lavish kisses on her navel and thighs. But step 4 is the real game changer. He tells the man to watch for the signs, her eyes, her breathing, to actually pay attention to her pleasure, and only then should he proceed. And get this, it even includes aftercare. He says not to withdraw right away. I mean, that's advice you'd find in a magazine today. It's all about being thoughtful and connected. Now, of course, the book is probably most famous for, well, its very detailed guide to sexual positions. But it's really important to see this as more than just a list. It's really a continuation of that same scholarly, methodical approach he applies to everything else. So how detailed are we talking?
He outlines at least 11 main positions, and then he adds a bunch more that he openly borrows from Indian texts. And that right there tells you something important. This wasn't just him writing down his own ideas. He was a scholar, compiling research, referencing other great works. He was treating this subject with the seriousness of any other academic field. And the names for these positions, they are just fantastic. So creative and poetic. You've got everything from the Screw of Archimedes, which sounds like an engineering diagram, to things like the Rainbow Arch or Love's Fusion. It just adds this layer of art and honestly a bit of fun to what could have been a really dry clinical textbook. But the book isn't all just how-to guides. It's also packed with stories and anecdotes to illustrate his points. And one of the wildest ones is this tale about two rival prophets, Mukailama and Shaykh, and it shows how seduction could be used as like a political weapon. So the story goes like this. Mukailama feels threatened by this rival prophetess, Shaykh. So his advisor comes up with this brilliant plan. He says, don't fight her with weapons, seduce her with smell. The advice was to fill a tent with so many different perfumes, amber, musk, you name it, that when she walked in and inhaled it all, she'd basically be swooning and unable to think straight. And it worked. The plan worked perfectly. Shaykh was completely overcome. She submitted to him and told all her followers to obey him instead. Just like that, the political threat was gone. And here's the best part. For her dowry, instead of getting gold or jewels, she got him to dispense her tribe from one of their daily prayers. I mean, what a story, right? It's all about the incredible power of scent and desire. So that brings up a big question. How did this 16th century book from Tunis make its way to the West? Well, its journey is almost as interesting as the book itself. Well, we have one person to thank for that, Sir Richard Burton. This guy was a total larger-than-life character, an explorer, a linguist, a writer, and in 1886, he translates this book into English. Now just try to picture it, this incredibly open, celebratory book about sex landing smack in the middle of the super buttoned-up Victorian era. It was a cultural bombshell, to say the least. But here's the crucial part. Burton didn't see himself as just translating some scandalous book. Not at all. He saw himself as carrying on the Shaykh's original mission. If you read his translator's notes, he basically says the exact same thing Nefzawi did. This isn't smut, this is a serious, important study. For him, just like for the author, this was a philosophical book all about human happiness. And all of this really brings us back to where we started. The Perfumed Garden is so much more than just a historical curiosity. It's this powerful reminder that things like attentiveness, mutual pleasure, and good communication, they've always been the key to a happy relationship. So it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? In our constant search for new, modern answers, just how much of this ancient wisdom have we left behind?